for joining. Okay, and a very warm welcome. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon to everyone who are. I know there are a lot of people joining from different parts of the world, and welcome to this webinar from APMP India. We are very proud to have a great speaker today, and he would be sharing his experience on a very critical, or rather that final gate of winning a deal. That is basically your pitch presentation. To introduce Simon, I don't think I have enough to talk about Simon because it's all over the internet. You just Google Simon Morton, you know him. You Google, you search for his book, the Presenter's Lab, on Amazon. You find it in one of the top ratings of books related to presentations. And honestly, I have seen many books on presentations, and most of the presentation books mostly talk about the tools, and we know the synonym tool for presentation. So instead of presentation books, they look more like PowerPoint books to me. But Simon's book, The Presentation Lab, actually gives a sort of a framework to what a presentation has to be instead of the tool or the presentation tool. Rather, I have followed that book, and it has. And thank you, Simon. It has really given me a way to look at my presentations differently. It has made a huge impact. I teach them in now. I follow your the recipes which you have, whether it's the audience heat map or the audience pathway, the must, intent, like. So all those are a part of my training. So that's there. So before I hand over this webinar to Simon, we all know that every presentation has got two important constituents. One is the content and the other is the context. And these two have to align together, because if the content doesn't align with the context, it is meaningless. If the context is not aligned, if the context is not what the content needs to be, then again it is meaningless. So obviously the content for today's webinar is going to come from Simon, but I want you guys to set the context for today's webinar. So for that, Rupesh would be running a poll. There are 5 short questions in the poll. We'll be giving you 15 seconds for each question. Please participate in that poll answer, because that is going to set the context for today's webinar. And from there, we will take it forward with Simon and presenting his presentation for today. Rupesh, can you run the poll, please? So you can scroll down and you can select the right answer. You can select multiple, or in some questions, you can select one.
These are great questions, by the way. Great questions.
We thought we would take the best opportunity to have the best from you. So we would set the right context. We would set the right context for you. How are you doing, Rupesh? Are you seeing the poll results?
Yes, I am getting the polls result now. Almost 50% people have voted. So you want me to give the? I mean, I can end the poll.
Let us give them 10 seconds more.
Yeah.
Those who have not voted, please do vote, because this will set the context for today's webinar. Rupesh, you can share the poll results for everyone.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you,
So,
everyone.
yeah, I'll just end the poll. So these are the results.
Interesting. Wow. Okay. Okay. Wow. So if you see the fifth question and the first question gives you like, okay, fine, great. I think we can end the poll here, Rupesh.
Yeah, poll has been ended already.
Okay, thank you. So I will, and we can see it very clearly from the polls that a lot of effort goes in building this pitch presentations, and it's a final presentation which we really which is the decision, it is the moment of that decision, and lots of effort goes into it. But still, when you listen to the audience, many of the audience after these presentations, they say, oh yeah, it was good, but really I don't know, was there everything what I was looking for? So what do we really miss in this pitch presentations? And there's another challenging question which somebody asked me very recently, is that if I ask you about the 3 key points you saw or you remember from the last presentation you attended, what will they be? And really, it put me in a fix.
Yeah.
I attended so, and I attended really recently. Every day, possibly, I will be attending a presentation or not, but so difficult to remember what exactly was the 3 key points on that presentation. So why is it so? And what do you suggest as a way forward to get over this dilemma, to get over this challenge?
Well, it's, you know, it's a challenge that is really prevalent for pitch presentations, especially the guys that are on the call today. APMP is full of bid and yeah, sort of tender professionals. So you're, if you're not careful, on a bit of a hamster wheel. Yeah, you finish one bid and you're on to the next almost, or maybe you're juggling 3 or 4 bids at the same time. And so my answer to that is how do we break this cycle? And I think the cycle is actually nothing to do with tools, not a lot to do with process initially, and actually everything to do with a mentality. Because I asked around our business, and I said, when I talk about pitch presentations, what are our clients saying about them? And they're saying, oh, pitch presentations, they're scary. They're something that you know, sort of, I just need to get done. They're one of those things that is a task. And as soon as somebody said task, I was like, wow, okay, that's huge. Let me share with you. I'm going to try and dip in and out of sort of slides as we go along, and try and tell some stories along the way. So let me sort of share this with you very quickly, and just sort of give you a bit of an idea as to how I'm thinking. So and somebody very kindly asked the name of the book that I had published. This is it. And I'm not sharing this just to say, hey, I wrote a book. I went through a really interesting experience when writing the book. So this is about, must be about 4 or 5 years ago, completely out of the blue, the phone rang. I was in the office. It was a normal day and, you know, busy day. And I got a phone call from some publishers in the US, Wiley. And they said, and it was a complete surprise. And they said, we love you. We love hearing what you say about presentations. You must write a book. So I went, wow. Almost immediately, my ego and my head grew hugely. And I told everybody I'd ever met that I was going to write a book. And we did the deal, and it was going to be this wonderful thing. And then suddenly the reality of sitting down and writing the book kicked in, and I had to do what I had to do. So I spoke to a few people that had written successful books, and they'd said, it's not as daunting as you might think. All you've got to do is get in an hour early into the office every day and just write. And sometimes what you write will be great. Sometimes what you write will be dreadful. But after a month, 6 weeks, you'll have emptied your head of all of this information, and then you just edit, and there you go, there's your book. And so excited to write a book, excited to be a published author. The first 2 weeks of that process for me was so exciting. I was there an hour early, and what I was writing was exciting, and I was energized, and I was really, really excited. After about 2 weeks, suddenly it became a real drag. It was, oh, I've got to do this hour's worth of writing before I can start the rest of the day. And what happened is, over time, as soon as it became a task, as soon as it became something that I just had to kind of get done, that's when the quality dipped. And so after 6 weeks, when I emptied my head of all of this information and I printed everything off, and I went through and started editing, it was a very depressing thing for me, because what I'd written was boring. You can't write a boring presentation book, yet somehow I had managed to do it, because what I was putting down was just stuff that there was no passion, there was no energy in it, there was nothing. I just written for an hour because I felt I had to. So I did something very important, which was take a big step back. And I actually, and we can't do this with presentations every day or writing books every day, but I booked myself into a hotel for 2 weeks, cleared my diary, had nothing on my mind other than the book, and kind of started from page one again and rewrote everything. And that's what ended up in the book. Now, the reason for me telling this story is presentations are a huge privilege, and pitch presentations in particular are really, really privileged, because they're the proof that everything you've done so far has got you this far, and it's now, this is your final opportunity. This is your moment of truth. This is the part where you really get to deliver and share your story. And the problem is if you're doing pitch presentation after pitch presentation, some of the numbers that people were sharing there about how many they do in a week or how many they do in a month, it's very easy to fall into the trap of, oh, it's another pitch presentation. I'll just crank the handle and do the same thing again. I'll change the logos, I'll change the numbers, but it's pretty much the same process we've got to go through. And what I'd implore everybody to do, and this is an easy thing to say, but not an easy thing to do, is treat every pitch presentation as it was your first. Do you remember that moment when you were first given the opportunity to support a pitch? You lived and breathed it. It was the most exciting thing. And you were full of ideas and you were full of energy. As we get older, yes, we get more efficient, but sometimes we take too many shortcuts. And in answer to your question, I think the biggest problem is that mentality kicks in. And it's really interesting. There are two levels or two sort of lenses that mentality can be seen as. First, us, all of us on this call, we're all responsible for creating pitch presentations. So if we let that task mentality kick in, naturally the output is going to be below par. Really interestingly, your audience kind of expect the same thing as well. So what has happened is a lot of the time, not all the time, but a lot of the time, we're coming in at a C plus B minus level of presentation. And our audience are going, I was expecting a C plus B minus level of presentation. All we have to do is just go a little bit better, 5–10% better in our presentation prep. And guess what? You stand out. Suddenly your audience goes, wow, I haven't seen a presentation like that forever. This is really interesting. We've just, as a bit of an aside, we've just pitched for some work to a big global pharmaceutical company. And we do a lot of work with some very large companies. And this happened just this morning. And I was looking at my emails and somebody pinged me a note saying, this is the feedback we got on our last proposal. And the guy, and he was very senior in this pharmaceutical company, said, I am literally open-jawed. I have never, this is the best proposal document I have ever seen in my life. And it was because the team that were on it weren't viewing it as, oh, I need to get that proposal out this week. They were viewing it going, my God, we've never been asked to do anything like this before. This is exciting. And their excitement and energy ended up coming through in the presentation, in the proposal, which included a presentation and a video and what have you. So it's a long answer to a short question, but you cannot put a price on energy and enthusiasm and passion. And if I may, let me just share with you sort of, this is a super, super simple sort of visual that we use all the time. And we call this the presentation paradox, which is everybody on this call will have experienced this. If anybody on this call has been involved in a bid, you know that you work late nights, early mornings, weekends, you give up time with your family to get the bid document as great as it possibly can be. And yeah, I will often use the example of when I started the business, I invested upfront in the assumption that if I got things right, I'd get a return on that investment. We do exactly the same when it comes to bids. We work every hour that God sends to us. We work incredibly hard, and we get to the point where we get to pitch. Against the competition, we get the opportunity to present our bid in person. Okay, it may be remote, but we've suddenly now got the opportunity to do that. And the importance of that pitch presentation is it's the moment of truth. It takes you from all of the hard work we put in to actually getting you over to the point of winning the job. And that for me that's why we call it the paradox, is that time and time again, we see people that work really hard and then run out of steam at the point of pitch presentation. And that's actually, this is where you need to dig deep and really, really go for it. Sorry, I went off, as I will often do, and no doubt will do throughout this session to sort of go through that. But hopefully that gives some context in terms of how there's a psychological element to this before we get into practice about sort of what you do. Oh, I think you may be on mute, Abby.
Yeah, sorry. So definitely, Simon, that really gives an insight. So you talk about something called the audience heat map. Okay.
Absolutely.
Which basically, I would let you talk about more about it. That how do we really need to think differently if we have to stand apart in the competition in our pitch presentations?
So this is, yeah, and this is really, really relevant to APMP and the bid professionals that we've got on the call. And actually, the example I will always use when I'm talking about audiences is a pitch presentation, because people get it. So again, without wanting to jump in and out of slides too much, but I think hopefully this will kind of give you guys a sense as to some of the ideas that we want to share. So as you say, it's about thinking differently. So just to put a little bit of context around this, it is absolutely essential that we never forget who the most important person or stakeholder in the presentation process is. And it's not your presenter. So if you're supporting a presenter, yeah, of course they're important. You need to make sure that you support them well. But the most important stakeholder in any presentation is the audience. And we simply do not, as an industry, as a business world, think long and hard enough about the audience. Of course, we might think about them going, oh, well, we've got some finance people in there, so we better make sure there's some finance information in there. We'll ask for a list of attendees and go, oh, there's procurement in there, so we better make sure that we show the calculations. And we build an understanding of our audience based on their job title rather than the journey they've been on so far. And I think for me, that's one of the things. So let me sort of share what I mean by this thinking differently idea. And in terms of thinking differently, it is about building your presentation on your understanding of your audience, but it needs to go deeper than that. So we have to ask ourselves questions. We have to ask ourselves questions about why are we there? Why have they invited us? Yes, of course, in a bid situation, the bid document might have been, and I'm sure it probably is, very compelling. You know, there's great, you know, sort of reputation of the business, the pricing's right, the technology's right, whatever it might be. But those are all kind of high level things. If we go a little bit deeper, there are deeper considerations for your audience, and that's why they've asked you along. So yes, of course, yeah, if your pricing is way out, that's a challenge that you need to address. But there will be other reasons for them going through this whole process. And what we've done is we've tried to build an idea around three key things. We call them the audience heat map sort of keys, which is your audience today, you guys, you will all be made up of a mixture of these three different keys, these three different behaviors. So today on the call, there will be some people that will be very factual and logical in the way that they view things. So they'll be going, okay, this is good. If you can just give me the 10 things, the 5 things, the 3 things I should do for my next presentation, and then we'll sort of dive into it. So for a factual audience, you could almost present using an Excel spreadsheet and they'd be more than happy because they're just hungry for facts. The visionary is that longer term element. So again, there may be some people on the call here that are aware of some of the, you know, some of the recent research that says the ability to clearly and effectively communicate is actually now right at the top of the business skills that people need. This is about communication. If I take on board some ideas and some best practice, guess what? I might get that promotion in a year's time, or I may be able to start my own business or whatever it might be because my communication skills have increased. So visionary isn't about the visual, it's about that longer term view that the people are pushing for. And then there's the emotional, and the emotional is a really interesting one because that can be positive or negative. So there may be some people on the call today that are going, great, I love these sessions. APMP always put on a really, really good session, and I'm excited because I get the opportunity to ask questions, and that excitement level will be there. There may be some people, I hope not, but there may be some people going, I am so busy. I've got a bid due out tomorrow, and my boss has said I've got to attend this. I said I can watch the recording. Went, no, you've got to be there so you can ask questions. So there may be some people that emotionally are sort of there with their arms crossed going, oh, just get on with it. I've got stuff to do. And all audiences will be a mixture of all of those 3 different behaviors. And the key is to how do I plot these so I can understand the state of mind of the audience as a whole. And so what we do is we actually build out what we call, pretty simple, a heat map. And the best way of me explaining how the heat map has helped me massively with pitch presentations is to talk you through an example of one. So we were asked by a large technology client of ours who I'd worked with for many years, still do, and they're a really lovely business to work with. And they picked up the phone and said, we've got a problem. Well, I haven't got a problem. We've got a great opportunity, which is we've got through to the final pitch of a huge deal. And we want you to help us pull together the pitch presentation so it really works well. So we run a workshop. We call it the presentation optimization workshop. So I went in, and because the audience is the most important stakeholder in any presentation, I said, great, tell me about your audience. And they said, well, it's finance, procurement, legal, IT, long list of people. And all of the things that they said were sounded very factual. Yeah, a procurement person is a factual person. They want to take information on. So I was very confident in saying, okay, I know where we sit with this. Now, bit of a backstory. The bid was regarding completely overhauling a card processing plant, which was actually in the UK. So it was for one of the large American banks, and the bank owned this card processing plant, and they realized that actually it wasn't core to their business. So they were looking to get rid of it. But if they sold it now, it wasn't working efficiently. It was kind of held together with sellotape and string was the example they said. They said it's really not a good, if we sold it now, we'd make a loss. So we're going to invest in it, make it state of the art, and then sell it as a state of the art card processing facility in the UK. So all of this information had been shared with me, and I went, okay, great. I think I know what the heat map looks like. It looks like this. Very high on factual, because everything you've told me about the audience is they're either techies, finance people, or legal people. They just want to know all of the information because that's how those people form an opinion and make a decision. Pretty big on visionary, because, you know, visionary, they're not looking to actually use this equipment particularly. The longer term view is to invest to then sell. So we know that they've got a longer term view. So pretty high on visionary. And we need to make sure that when we talk about our solution, that we recognize how important that visionary element is. And very small on emotional. I've never met an emotional procurement person in my life. I don't think they exist. So we're going to go pretty low on procurement and emotion. And that was our heat map. And then we dived into, okay, what's your key message? What content have you got to share? What proof points have you got? And we started pulling information together. And you know how I mentioned at the start of this process, how important excitement is, and how important that energy that you bring to a pitch presentation is. An hour into the workshop, I wasn't feeling excited or energized, and nobody in the room was. And that's a really worrying sign. So there was a moment where I thought, oh, okay, we're not doing this right. If we're not careful, we'll pull together a presentation by numbers. It's going to feel like a really sterile engagement. And whenever I get involved in any sort of presentation, I kind of wait, and it always happens, that excited feeling in your stomach. A bit like when you were a child and you were going to a party, you got all excited. Well, that's how I and my colleagues feel about presentations. And it just wasn't there. So we stopped for coffee, and I said, look, I don't know about you, I'm not feeling this. Help me understand a little bit more about the audience. And rather than falling into the trap I'd fallen into, we just talked about our experiences with them so far, who were there and what have you. And actually what came out in the conversation was that the people I was working with, the pitch team, they knew a fair number of the people in the room. And they said, look, you know, we've been through due diligence. We're that far through the process. And by doing that, we know the names of their kids. We know where they're going on holiday. Yeah, we like them and we think they like us. And one guy who had been really quiet throughout the process, but whenever he spoke, everybody listened. He said, you know what? I don't think this is about factual stuff. I think this is about trust. And it was, oh my God, that's exactly it. The heat map was more like this. And if you think about it logically, it made perfect sense. They had gone, this was a multi-million-pound deal. A vast amount of money was being spent. So they'd gone through due diligence. The factual element within the room had been satisfied. Yes, of course, we had to reference the structure of the deal and some of the SLAs and what have you. But frankly, the audience probably knew more about those phrases and elements of the contract than the people presenting did, because they'd been through them with a fine-tooth comb. The visionary was still really, really important, But the emotional bit, the trust bit, was actually where we were going to be able to address their challenges. And whilst we didn't pitch the presentation in this way, the subtext of the whole presentation was something along the lines of, look, we know that you know that we can do this. We wouldn't be here if you didn't think our technology wasn't robust enough and wasn't fit for purpose. We wouldn't be here if you didn't think our pricing was fair or that our service was good. So that's that factual piece. We do know, however, that this is a big project. It's a big project for you and it's a big project for us. And there will be bumps in the road. Now, we want to work in partnership with you and in trust with each other. That means that when we hit those bumps in the road, we work together on them. And we have a shared mission. And we don't, at the first sign of a problem, start rushing to lawyers and start sitting opposite each other at a table. We want you to know that when we hit one of those bumps in the road, you can call us up any day, anytime, day or night, and we've got your back. We are there right behind you. Now, we didn't put it in those words, but that was the message, which is we are committed to work alongside you as a partner, not as a supplier. And that's what will make this project work. Now, I don't know about you, but I think that's a pretty brave thing to do. There is the sort of, this isn't against Shipley in any way, but there will be a Shipley format that says this is how you do a pitch presentation. We ignored that 100%. And we said, what does the audience need to hear to make the right decision? And that's what we did. And so it was a very, very different structure. And that's the value of the heat map, is it forces you to visually plot where you think your audience is and challenge those questions. It says, why so high on emotion? Or why so high on visionary? And as a group, you can then start challenging each other. Hands up, this will always be a best guess. You can't guarantee that your audience will absolutely fit the heat map that you've built. But if you ask yourself those questions, that's when you go from a C plus B minus presentation to a B, B plus. Just because you're building your presentation around the needs of your audience, and that's absolutely key. Again, I feel like I've talked a lot. Hopefully that's been useful.
No, that was very insightful, and I'm sure our participants, our audience have got great insights out of it. I think there is a question over here. Okay, right. Yeah, you can see. Yeah, you can see the question. Okay.
Yeah, let me just click on that. Yeah. Great, fantastic question. Where do you get this information from? There's a lot of information there. Yes, you're right. So often you will have a question. You'll be given maybe the names and their job titles, and that's it. This is where the teamwork element is really important, because you may not have been responsible for the bid all the way through the process. So whoever the lead salesperson is, or what have you, that's when that communication with the sales team is going to be really important. Because and what I've often coached people to say is, we can do this pitch presentation in one of two ways. We can either do it by numbers, or we can personalize it, really personalize it to our audience. And to really personalize it to an audience, you have to go beyond the information, the basic information that's shared with you in the invite. So asking and I can share this afterwards, but we've got a kind of a bit of a cheat sheet that says, what questions should you be asking? Why are we there? What's our reputation? Why are they there? Why are they giving up an hour, 3 hours a day of their time to listen to these pitches? What part do they play? And all you're doing is, it's a bit like searching for clues. You're just trying to pull together a better picture of who you're pitching to. Now, what this does do, which is why it can sometimes be a bit contentious, is it will highlight potentially holes in your salesperson's knowledge of the accounts. And that's fine. but as long, you've got to be brave enough. You've got to have an equal footing to say, look, for us to pull together this as effectively as we can do, I need this information because, and use the heat map. We always use the heat map as, sorry, I need to know these questions so I can plot an understanding of our audience so we can do the right thing. But it's being Sherlock Holmes and pulling on the clues and understanding how you pull those elements together.
Thank you. Thank you for answering that, Simon. Okay, one of the other things which we have is that as a bid manager or the proposal manager, it is not only the pitch presentations which we get involved. There are a couple of other types of categories of presentations also, and I think we will see a like of them. Rupesh, can we run the poll, please?
This is really useful information you're pulling together as well. So great questions.
So we can stop the poll now, Rupesh, and we can share the results. Wow. See, this is
look at those numbers.
Okay. So now that we know that a bid manager or a proposal manager, it's not only the pitch presentation, and there are so many different audiences. And what do they need to really do, or how do they really need to think differently to address these different categories of presentations? Because that one single formula won't work, right?
That's right. Yeah, and so always start with your audience. A phrase I know I get bored of saying, but it's so key. It's so important that people remember it, is the audience is the most important stakeholder in any presentation. So always focus on your audience. But I've got a really simple sort of structure. Again, let me just sort of share some thoughts with you, and then here we go. Make sure that I'm sharing the right one. And this sits around this act differently thing, which is how do we get people to think, or sort of rather act differently when it comes to creating those presentations. Let me just share this very, very quickly with you. That long list of presentations, all of them, at some point, somebody will go, I know what we've got to do. We've got to do this, and this will fix the problem that we're having. So we hear a lot about, and this is kind of strange for a company like mine, Eyeful, to be saying, but we will sometimes get the call that says we've got a really important sales presentation or a pitch presentation, and we're not happy with it. Can you make it look nicer? So we can apply a bit of lipstick to it. It doesn't make it any nicer. It just makes it look prettier. And we will often challenge the person that's on the call, and it's lovely that they call us, but they will often, we will say, look, what do you want your audience to remember? Do you want them to remember your message and why they should be working with you? Or do you want them to remember how good you are at PowerPoint? And hopefully both. It'd be great if they can go wonderfully presented and what a powerful message. But if you had to choose between the two, I'd spend your time on messaging. I wouldn't worry too much about how pretty your slides are. So taking slides and making them pretty doesn't make them any more effective. We do a lot of training, as you can imagine, but putting people through a training program where they are brilliant at sort of engaging with an audience and doing all of those things, if that's not supported by a really good story and really clear messaging and a call to action, no matter how interesting and engaging they may be, you're still not going to get the result that you want. You might mark really well on very entertaining presenter, still didn't really understand what you do, but very entertaining presenter. We don't want that. So it's focusing your attention in the right areas. And a pet peeve for me, and we all get it, everybody on this call will have been, been tempted down this line, is shiny new technology that we go, oh, that's it. That will take my underperforming PowerPoint and change the way that people engage with it. And I don't know how many people on the call have been involved with something like Prezi. And I always use Prezi as the example, not because it's a bad piece of technology. I think Prezi is actually very, very effective, but when it's used properly. And we went through a phase where people were calling up going, can you take our PowerPoint? It's not very good. Take our existing underperforming PowerPoint and turn it into a Prezi. And we said, yep, we can. You'll just end up with an underperforming Prezi, because the problem isn't with the technology all the time. Sometimes it is. You may be using the wrong tool to engage with your audience. But taking a problem and wrapping it up in a new piece of technology doesn't fix that. Really, when it comes to presentations, it's really simple. I mean, it's so simple. A great presentation is made up of three things. The message, so the bit that your audience will remember and ultimately take action from. So what is it you want your audience to remember? Yeah, you mentioned it first thing that, you know, at the start of the call, which is, what are the three things I remember from the last presentations? Well, if you can't remember them, that's because the message was a bit fuzzy. People do tend to remember things in threes. So if you can build a message that's super clear, that is worth investing time in. So if any of you are currently working on bids and you're going, okay, how do I position this? First of all, ask yourself as a bid team, what is it we want our audience to remember? Because once you've got that, then actually all the other bits kick in really easily. Now, death by PowerPoint, which is a phrase we've all heard many times before, death by PowerPoint doesn't happen because you've got ugly looking slides. Death by PowerPoint happens because you share too much content. Because you've got no clarity around what you need to say to support the message, because your message isn't clear, you just end up throwing everything you can possibly think of at your audience, hoping some of it will stick. So this is hopefully one of the key things I can share with you is, if you can invest time in clarifying what your message is, the content will pick itself. And then any noise, get rid of it. Now, if you have to put it into an appendix, that's fine. That's not the problem. But what we've got to make sure is that we now understand our audience better than we did. We've now got real clarity around our message. We're going to support that with the right content, not just lots of it. And then, and only then, do we start worrying about how it's designed. Because, that all three are really important. But if I was going to throw something at, sort of energy and time at any of these things, I'd make sure that we were building on a strong foundation, which is that message. Because when you've got a clear message and you support it with the right content and it's designed well, that ultimately leads to what this whole presentation thing is about, which is making sure that your audience takes the right action. This is a lovely phrase. It's not one of my quotes, and I really wish it was, but it's worth writing down, because if you're going to take anything from this session into your next bid or pitch presentation, think about this. Confused people never take action. How many times have people, maybe you guys have been in presentations where you finish and one of your colleagues says, well, so what was the presentation about? And you went, I have no idea. They talked a lot, but I've got nothing to take away, nothing to act upon. Yeah, just to make it clear, I've got a call to action at the end of this, but my clear message through this whole presentation, you've seen it 2, maybe 3 times already, is I want you to think differently, act differently, and deliver your next presentation differently. That's my message, nothing fancier than that. And that's what is really, really important. And once you've got clarity around that message, then you can start being a bit, a bit more creative. So we can start looking at different story structures and how we might, depending on the type of engagement that we've got with our audience, what type of audience they are, how long we've got, what information we want to share, then we can start choosing. I've chosen, sort of 4, but we've got a whole range of different story structures that you can start pulling upon that really do start tailoring your pitch presentation to your audience, supported by a really clear and engaging message. Again,
Great insights, Simon. I can't really. I can imagine where our participants are right now thinking about it. But just coming to the point that generally when we look at the things at an organizational level, we look at three things and surprisingly, that is also PPT: people, process, technology. Okay. Okay. So I want to ask you, the next question is something which is going to be related to the technology and of course the delivery. But before that, I want to run a poll and see what our participants are doing related to technology. Rupesh, can we run the poll, please?
Yes. So just before running a poll, I think Anusa Fatima has raised her hand. So do you want to answer that question, or shall we?
Yeah, please. Yeah, you can take that question, please. Yeah, Anusha, go ahead, please. If Rupesh, Rupesh, you have unmute. Anusha? Okay, Rupesh.
Yeah, hi, sorry, that was by mistake. Apologies.
Yeah. Okay, so Rupesh, go ahead with the poll, please.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we can stop the poll now, Rupesh. We're already done. Okay, can you see the results?
Oh, yeah. Okay, really. Okay. Aha. Interesting. Really good.
Okay, so my question to you, Simon, here is, how do you see that we really understand the people part of it, the audience part of it, the messaging part of it, but do you think tools like tools which you see today, like Canva, which say everybody can be a designer, or a non-designer's designing tool, and you can even really make presentations, but do they really impact the presentation, or do they really impact the audience, or what do you think is, from your experience, is an engaging presentation, engaging delivery of a presentation?
So, yeah, I think Canva's a really interesting example, but actually PowerPoint's very similar as well. And the reason I pull the two together, and Haiku Deck and some of the other things that were on that list there is, they are, what's the best way of putting this? They're a double-edged sword. Because sort of on the positive side, they democratize design. So that's wonderful. So we don't have to go to expensive agencies to have all of this stuff sort of designed. We can do that ourselves. The negative side of that is that they're too easy to use. So suddenly we turn everybody into a designer. As you can tell, gray hair, gray beard. So I'm a very old man. And so having been around for a while, I can remember presenting before the world of PowerPoint, where we were using 35mm carousel sort of projectors. Some of you may remember those.
Yeah, I do.
If you don't, ask your grandparents, they may remember it. It's a long time ago. The reason for referencing those was they were really, really good in forcing you to approach a presentation in the right way. Because to get a 35mm slide made, you had to spend a fair amount of money. You'd have to go to a graphic designer who would using very expensive computer sort of equipment, or hand draw this stuff, get a photo, get it mounted, and it would take maybe 48 hours, maybe a week. and it would cost you, each slide would cost you, you know, sort of £50 or £100. Now, what that forced us to do as presenters is to think really carefully about what we put on that slide, because it was time consuming and it was expensive. And PowerPoint, Canva, Haiku Deck, all of the other things that are out there mean that we don't go through that process. Yeah, I'm sure you've all heard that, you know, sort of the statistic that 30 million new PowerPoint presentations are created every day. That's probably 25 million more than we need to. But because PowerPoint is so easy to do, because Canva is so easy to jump into and start developing, we end up shifting into worrying about what it looks like before we've really thought about who we're aiming it at, what the message is, and what content we need to share. And we work with Microsoft, and we've got a great relationship with Microsoft. And I've jokingly said a few times, can you bring Clippy back? Because we just want Clippy just to say one thing. As soon as you open up PowerPoint, what we want him to say, are you sure you need another slide? A, because there's probably one already existing, and you could use your time a bit more efficiently than creating something from a blank slide. But also, do you need a slide to get that information across? Yeah, this is probably a good example of how I personally like to receive information. Is I want to see the person talking passionately about the topic, and occasionally referencing something visually to support it. What tends to happen is that flips the other way, and suddenly the presenter becomes the support act to the slides, and that's not the right measure. So there's a lot of work to be done for us to unpick the use of Canva, PowerPoint, Haiku Deck, Prezi, and all those guys. And that's not to say those technologies aren't great. But what we've done is we've given the key to all of this powerful information or powerful tool set, and not really told people how to use it properly. And when I get pushback from marketing directors, they say, yeah, but you know what? It's important that people can visually sort of share the information. I said, absolutely, I get that, but if it's a pitch, if it's a sales deck, if it's a marketing deck, a conference deck, whatever it might be, you have given the keys to your branding and what have you to somebody that has never been trained on how to do that stuff. Would you give them access to your website so they can make some changes just before somebody visits it? Of course you wouldn't. Yet bizarrely, we've done exactly that with PowerPoint. We've made it too easy to use. So again, tools are really valuable. Tools need to be used appropriately. And again, let me sort of jump and sort of share my thinking on this. If I may, let me just jump into this, get past this. And when we sort of get into how we deliver differently, this is kind of, we talk about something called blended presenting, which is this idea of actually equip yourself with a whole bunch of tools, because I feel like I'm a very angry man today, and I'm not angry, I'm just passionate. But one of the biggest problems we've got is that out there, most of the thinking, most of the books, most of the videos, the blogs and what have you, absolutely obsessed with formal presenting. So, you know, talk like Ted, how to present like Steve Jobs, all of those great books and ideas, they are wonderful if you're presenting on stage at a conference, or sometimes when it's a pitch and somebody, you know, has said on the agenda, no, you've got 30 minutes to present, and then there'll be a Q&A session and what have you. And that's fine if those are the constraints that you have to work within. However, most salespeople and most bid professionals, in my experience, given the opportunity, want to do what we're doing, which is having a conversation. And you say, well, what about this? And I can jump to the relevant slide to share the information with you. And I think if we can craft tools that allow people to have better sales or bid conversations, we'd be a lot more effective. One of the questions that came up was from from Renu about, do you recommend adding interactive elements? Well, yes, I do. And that's not just questions and polls. It's things like the ability to have a toolkit that you can jump in and out of very, very easily. And you can take this all the way through to informal presentations, which aren't necessarily relevant for the bid stuff you guys get involved in, but there are more and more roundtable conversations, fireside chat type presentations that would be so much better if you didn't force slides at them. And actually what you did is you said, oh, well, it's a bit like this. So I've had really good conversations and presentations that have been formal, interactive, or informal. They all had the same message. They all shared the same content. Visually, I use different tools to get that information across, but nothing changes in terms of message and content. The only bit that changes is how I present. And the example I always use, and I don't know if this shows me in a particularly good light, is I'll say, yeah, I travel a lot, or used to travel when we could. And often you'd be at an airport and you might be having a beer before you jump on the plane. And you'd always end up chatting with the person next to you. And always the conversation would be, what do you do? And so you'd have a brief conversation. Oh, that sounds interesting. And at that point, if I then go, great, well, I've got some slides I can show you that tell you all about what we do and how we do it, they'd run a mile. But if I can tell my story, if I can present my story using the back of a beer mat or a napkin, great. It's the same form of presentation, but that's the kind of thinking that we need to be putting in place. And as presenters, we've never had it so good. We've got great tools to allow us to do this. So an informal presentation can be on your smartphone. I'm not saying have a bunch of PowerPoint slides on your phone, but if you've got a visual that kind of explains how you do it, do it. It's a great way of engaging. But equally, don't forget the power of the formal presentation. And because it's wonderful to have a group of sort of bid professionals all together on one call. Can I just say how powerful demonstrations are? Demos in pitches are incredibly valuable. So don't lose sight of the art of the demo, because they are really, really powerful. There's a story I tell, which is of a client that we worked with for many years, and they are a housing brick manufacturer. So I think you bake bricks, but basically they for the construction industry. And when we were pulling together their sales presentation, they said, don't worry, we've got some really nice pictures of our bricks. And we said, at what point do you think your audience wants to see a picture of a brick? They want to feel it, they want to see it, they want to hold it. So their salespeople are now having to drag bricks from one meeting to another so they can sort of share that. And then finally, this interactive idea of how do I use technology and things like a whiteboard. A whiteboard is a wonderful way of demonstrating and interacting with an audience. And what's really spooky is if you're presenting on a whiteboard, and there is a skill to that has to be trained. But as soon as you start doing that, your audience will go, well, that's interesting. And they'll pick up a pen and they'll start adding to it. And that interaction is invaluable. They're not necessarily going to be relevant for a lot of pitch presentations, but the other presentation types that you do, don't lose sight of the fact that there is life after PowerPoint. It does exist.
Okay, so that was really interesting, Simon. And one thing I just want to know is that as organizations, as businesses, and typically for the business leaders, I have at least never seen that there is, like, you make organizational budgets for developing skills in technology, skills in maybe emails or communications, email communication. I have hardly seen investments in happening in presentations, whereas a presentation is such an important component of your every part, whether it's your internal communication or whether it's your external communication. Okay, and even if it is a investment investment, it is more like a, okay, let us buy some images, stock images, or some icons, or maybe conduct a PowerPoint training, and that we can obviously do internally. So before I get, that's my question is based on that, what is your take on that? But because before that, I would like to know from our audience through this poll that what do we really do?
This could be a very depressing poll question for me. That's my concern.
Yeah, we can stop the poll now, Rupesh, and let's see the results. I know it would be depressing.
Right.
Here we go.
Yeah, not surprised. Part of that, I think, goes back to the point we said before about how easy it is for anybody to use PowerPoint. I was chatting with somebody recently. I said, I'm sure if we walked 5 minutes in the local radius in the business area that we're in, the vast majority of people will go, yeah, I can pull together a pretty decent presentation, and some of my slides will look pretty good because I'm pretty good at PowerPoint. And those two are very different things. First of all, rarely are people equipped to pull together a good story. So there's investment around that, and you're absolutely right. There are corporate templates that can make your slide work better. PowerPoint is getting really clever using some of the AI tools that Microsoft have got. They can offer design ideas and what have you, and I think that's great news, because it frees people up to focus on the important stuff, which isn't the slides, it's the story. And so in terms of the investment, it made me think immediately of some of my old college friends who I'm still in touch with. And when I started Eyeful 16 years ago, they wished me every bit of luck. And then every year since, they've gone, I can't believe you're still in business. I mean, it's PowerPoint. And I have to say, it's not PowerPoint, it's all of these other things, but they can't quite recognize the scale of the problem. And more companies are starting to do it. And COVID globally has been an awful thing. But I actually think it has made people consider things like this and going, we still need to communicate. Yeah, I'm sort of talking in circles here, but one of the things I will often say, and people always look at me going, you've said that, is some of the best presentations I've ever delivered have been when my laptop has stayed in my briefcase, and I've whiteboarded, or we've discussed, or so I've not needed a tool. I've needed a story, but I've not needed a tool to pull upon. And I think in the absence of that personal engagement, people have gone, oh, I need something, I need a platform to talk around. And that's where people are recognizing that it's not just a bunch of slides. It's how they build their story, how they drive a call to action, and all those sort of things. So yeah, I'm not surprised at that poll result, but equally, it's if you'd done the same poll maybe 3 years ago, it might be been even more the other way.
Yeah, I agree. I think we have a question from Manish. We'd like to take that. We are already over time.
Hi, Manish. Oh, here we go. Fantastic info. You know what? That's absolutely right. So basically, sort of Manish's point there is that the new normal, which is sort of fast becoming the normal now, has changed the dynamics a lot. And I think there's part of that is we've had to flex with it. Some of the research that I've sort of seen recently of how people are back to back with meetings, it's scary, the impact that it has on people's ability to engage, listen, and then act upon the information that you've got to share. There are ways around that. One of them is actually not always blocking out an hour. So people have this sense that a presentation is always an hour. So if you go from presentation to meeting to presentation, there's no time. So part of going back to who's your audience, what's your message, what content do you need to share. There's a lovely quote that's been attributed to so many different people. I don't know who originally came up with it, which is nobody ever complained about a presentation being too short. And that's the thing to bear in mind. If you can get your information across quickly and succinctly, and then maybe follow it up with the next phase. So if we had a day together, I'd talk about a whole bunch of things, one of which would be something called connect, communicate, sustain. And this is the way that we're seeing more and more organizations sort of manage and organize their presentations. Is the connect bit is what we talked about before. So the understanding your audience, understanding and clarifying your message, choosing the right content and the right visuals. Connect is that. Communicate is delivering it. And then the sustain is what happens after that communication. Because what frustrates me, and I see still happens a lot, is that people will deliver a presentation and then send the slides on afterwards. Well, that won't work. That won't work for so many reasons, but the main reasons are a good PowerPoint slide deck is visual punctuation to you, the presenter. So in the absence of you, those slides really won't make a lot of sense. So if they're then shared amongst your target organization, then they're not telling a quarter of the story that they should do. The good news is that we now have a technology where we're able to record information. So if you're able to say, yeah, I recognize that they're shorter than they would be, they tend to be a bit more formal, and that's kind of, you know, you don't have the opportunity to sit down and have a coffee and a talk. Record that, edit those down, and we can all edit in Windows because that's possible, and start sharing via private links on YouTube or within emails or what have you. Just the 30 seconds, 60 seconds nugget that's really valuable to drive action after the session. So the new normal has changed the way that we approach things. It has put some constraints around it, but it's also given us real opportunities to be more creative in how we follow that. Now, the interesting sort of final point is, and I'm in the middle of writing a paper, which I'll, again, with your permission, happy to share, called the new normal, which is hybrid presenting, where you're going to be pitching, or your team is going to be pitching to people in the room, but also people remotely as well. And how do you build a connection and a rapport and engagement with that very different set of audiences? So that's an interesting challenge that we're facing at the moment. But you're absolutely right. A lot has changed since, really has.
Thank you so much, Simon. I think with that, we come to the end. Thank you so much. I think we will be happy to share the paper with our participants. You can mail it to me, and Rupesh should happy to share it. Thank you, everybody, for being here, and we will look forward.
Abhijit, sorry for interrupting. I think there is one more question from Sunil.
Oh, okay. There is a question there. Oh, sorry about that. Yeah.
Oh, yes, Sunil, fantastic. Okay, so what are the tools to keep people glued to your virtual presentation and away from their mobile phones and emails? Ah, yeah, the distraction of everyday life. It could be pets at home, could be anything. And there's always these different distractions that are there. I don't think there are any tools specifically. There's some tricks that you can keep up your sleeve, one of which might be polls. They're a great way of doing that. Doing what we've done throughout this, which is actually not just hiding behind a bunch of PowerPoint slides, but actually having more of a conversation and asking questions, getting polls in place and what have you. But there's no sort of magic tool that I've seen that's made people go, wow. I don't know if you guys have had a play with it yet. There's a new thing within Teams, if you use Teams, that they've applied, which is where you as the presenter are at the foreground and the slides are behind you. And that's an interesting angle of how to engage with your audience through your slides. So it's a button within Teams, and that's quite interesting. And there'll be more of that type of stuff coming through. My my recommendation is, and who knows what will be happening in a year's time or 2 years' time with the technology, but it goes back to the basics that happen, sort of, if you're in person or if you're doing it via webinar, which is keep it relevant to your audience. Go right back to what I said. What does your audience want to hear? What's important to them? Make sure you share that information in a way that drives action, and don't overstay your welcome. Yeah, keep it short and keep it sweet.
Thank you, Simon, and thank you everyone for joining us here. We would be happy to get your feedback. Please do respond to us with your feedback. You will receive the feedback immediately after this webinar, and we promise that we will be back again next month with another great speaker from the industry. And thank you, Simon, from all of us, and have a great evening. Thank you.
Thoroughly enjoyed it. Thanks so much for having me.
We really enjoyed it. Bye.